The first time I really looked at her, she was standing by the laundry room door with a broken latch in her hand. The metal had snapped clean through, like something tired of holding on. "I'll have to get someone to fix it," she said, more to the air than to me. She wasn't what I expected a landlady to be. No clipboards or small talk, just a quiet steadiness, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, a faint scent of detergent that didn't try to hide the smell of rain outside. I said I could take a look. She hesitated, then handed me the latch. "It's fine. You just moved in. I've got time," I said, though I didn't really. I just didn't want to leave yet. Her name was Mina, though I didn't call her that for months. Everyone in the building called her Miss Hara. She lived on the ground floor, 2 doors from mine. Sometimes I'd hear her kettle click off through the wall, the sound muffled and familiar. I started noticing her rhythms, the 6 a.m. sweep of the porch, the low hum of the radio from her kitchen window, the way she never used her phone in public. It was all small, quiet, practiced. Like she'd built her life around avoiding interruption. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd just moved to the city for freelance work. Illustration jobs that came and went like weather. My days were long stretches of silence punctuated by the buzz of delivery riders and the low whir of my computer fan. Sometimes I'd open a new message draft, type a few words to no one, then delete them before they could make sense. That was loneliness, I guess. Not the crying kind. Just the kind where every sound feels a little louder than it should. One evening, I passed her door on the way out. It was half open, the hall light spilling in. She looked up from a stack of envelopes. "You're out late," she said. "Just coffee. Still working?" I nodded. "Deadlines," she smiled, faintly. "You artists, you all live off caffeine and regret," I laughed, surprised. "Mostly caffeine. She tilted her head, sorting through the mail. "You should try tea sometime," I wanted to say, "only if it's yours," but instead I said, "maybe." A week's passed like that. Half conversations in the hall, brief nods near the mailboxes, the sound of her kettle becoming part of my night. One morning, she left a thermos outside my door. No note. Just steam rising from the lid like it had been there a minute too long. Inside was tea, sweet, faintly floral, still warm. I stood there, holding it, listening to the quiet hum behind her door. I didn't knock. I just waited until the hallway felt too still, then went back inside. That night, I couldn't draw. My hands kept returning to the thermos on the desk, the faint dent along its rim, the smell of her kitchen that clung to the lid. The next time I saw her, she looked tired. Not unkind, just far away. "I shouldn't have opened the door," she said suddenly, when I handed her the repaired latch. I blinked. "Why not?" She looked past me to the window, where the rain pressed soft against the glass. "It's better when things stay closed," she said quietly. I didn't know what to say. My hands were still on the latch, her fingers brushing mine for a second too long. "But you did," I said finally. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, everything in the hallway stilled, the dripping pipe, the hum of the fridge, the faint scent of detergent. She didn't answer. Just turned, slowly, and closed the door. The sound of it stayed with me the rest of the night. After that night, I told myself I'd keep things simple, pay rent on time, mind my own business, avoid standing too long in her doorway. But simplicity never lasts once you've noticed someone. She knocked one afternoon, holding a small screwdriver. "Can you help me with the shelf?" she asked. "It keeps tilting." The shelf was in her kitchen, narrow space, soft light, walls the color of faded cream. I tried not to stare at the little things, the chipped mug on the counter, the framed photo of a coastline, the single chair tucked against the wall. It didn't feel like anyone else lived there. "Your husband not around to fix it?" I asked before thinking. She paused. "Not for years." Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Hayes remarried. Different city." I nodded, pretending to focus on the screws. "Sorry," she waved it off. "Don't be. Some things end quietly." The screwdriver slipped once, she steadied the shelf with her hand next to mine. Her fingers brushed my wrist. Light, accidental, but enough to make the air feel heavier. "Look straight now," I said. "Good." She smiled a little. "You have careful hands." I didn't know what to do with that. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing her everywhere, by the mailbox, at the market across the street, once at the bus stop with a small paper bag of groceries. Each time, she greeted me like nothing had ever lingered between us. But something had. When she smiled, I found myself wondering what her laugh used to sound like when it wasn't careful. When she looked away, I wondered if she ever wanted to look longer. At night, I'd imagine her kitchen light flicking on, her shadow moving past the window, and I'd feel that dull ache that isn't quite desire but close enough to sting. One evening, it rained hard. Power flickered out across the building. I lit a candle and sat by the window, sketchbook in my lap. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock. She stood there, flashlight in hand. "You all right?" "Yeah," I said. I get nervous when the lights go out." She laughed quietly. "Old habit. When my son was little, I'd tell him stories so he wouldn't be scared." "You have a son. He's your age." A pause. "Lives abroad now." Something in the way she said it felt like loss, not pride. We sat in the hallway, sharing the candle between us. The rain softened outside. "Do you still tell stories?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Not for a long time." The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just full, like something unnamed was sitting between us. When the lights finally came back, she stood, brushing off her knees. "Thanks for the company," she said. "Any time." She reached out, touched my shoulder, barely there but warm. A thank you, maybe, or a reminder. After she left, I stared at the candle's flicker fading out, and for some reason, I couldn't move. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The rhythm between us started to shift after that night in the hallway. Not in any loud way, just small misalignments, mistimings, shorter conversations. She started locking her door faster when she came home. I started hesitating before knocking, but sometimes when she forgot, I'd see her curtain half open, her shadow moving inside. She'd be wiping the counter, or folding towels, or just standing still like she was trying to remember why she walked into the room. One Sunday, she asked if I could help carry a box from her storage unit. I said yes too quickly. It was the kind of late afternoon that feels like it's waiting for something. Dust floating in slow light, the air still heavy. "This one," she said, pointing to a faded cardboard box marked winter things. She bent to lift it, but I reached first. Our hands brushed again. "You don't have to." "I know." We carried it up together. Close enough that I could smell the faint trace of her perfume. Something citrus, understated. When we reached her door, she fumbled for the key. The box tilted slightly in my arms. "Careful," she murmured, steadying it with both hands. Her palms stayed there a moment too long. We froze. Just stood there. The sound of her breath, soft and uneven. My heart louder than it should have been. Then her phone buzzed. She stepped back quickly, almost grateful. "It's just a tenant." Her voice was smaller than usual. After that, she avoided me for a while. Or maybe I avoided her. Hard to tell. Our schedules no longer aligned. She started doing laundry early mornings. The thermos disappeared. I told myself it was for the best, but late one night I heard a knock. 2 quick taps, then one slower. When I opened the door, she stood there, hair slightly damp, a faint tremor in her hands. "Sorry," she said. "There's a leak again." I followed her down the hall. The pipe was dripping steadily into a bowl. She stood beside me, arms crossed tight, like she was holding something in. "I'll call the plumber tomorrow," I said. She nodded. "Thank you." We just stayed there, watching waterfall, one drop at a time. "I shouldn't bother you so late," she said. "You can," I said quietly. She looked up then, eyes tired, searching. "You're kind," she said. "But kindness sometimes gets mistaken." I wanted to tell her I understood. That I wasn't mistaking anything. That maybe we were both just trying to feel less alone. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached to turn off the tap, and my hand brushed hers. Neither of us moved. Her breath caught. Her fingers tightened just slightly, enough to make me think she wouldn't pull away this time. But then she did. A soft exhale, a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good night," she said. She turned, leaving the bowl beneath the pipe. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. And in that silence, I realized how close almost can feel to everything. It was the first warm evening of spring. I found her outside, sitting on the front steps with her sleeves rolled up, a mug beside her. The air smelled faintly of rain-soaked pavement and jasmine from somewhere nearby. "You're out late," I said. She looked up, smiled a little. "You too." I sat one step below her, close enough to feel the heat from her leg through the fabric of my sleeve. Neither of us said much. Just listened to the street sounds. A car passing, a window shutting, someone's laughter fading down the block. After a while she said, "I saw you with someone earlier. The girl with the red umbrella." I blinked. "A client. Just dropped off some work." Her tone was light, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "She looked close." "She's not," I said. I didn't ask. But she had. The silence stretched thin. I picked at the seam of my jeans. "You don't have to worry about that." "I'm not worried," she said quickly. Then, quieter, "I just forget sometimes that you're young." It wasn't cruel, just tired. Like she was reminding herself of something she wanted to stop feeling. I looked at her profile, the soft lines near her eyes, the way the light caught in her hair. "You say that like it's a problem." "It is," she said. "For me." She took a slow breath, eyes on the streetlights. "You remind me of when I still believed people didn't leave." "That's not fair to you." Her voice faltered near the end. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her fingers trace the rim of the mug, again and again, as if the motion could undo what she'd said. "I don't know what you think this is," she said finally. "But it shouldn't be anything." I almost laughed, but it came out as a sigh. "Then why does it feel like something?" She turned to me then, really turned, eyes wet but steady. "Because I let it. Because I didn't stop it soon enough." Her honesty landed like a small, sharp truth. The kind you can't unhear. A breeze lifted, carrying the smell of the jasmine again. For a second, everything felt too still. I wanted to reach for her hand. To say that I didn't care about rules or timing, or what people would think. That all I wanted was the quiet of this. Her next to me, saying things she'd never said before. But her eyes softened, and she whispered, "Don't." The word wasn't harsh. It was almost pleading. I stopped. The night stretched between us, taut as a held breath. She looked down at her hands, then at me. "You should go," she said, but her voice trembled on the last word. I stood hesitating. She didn't look up. Just added softly, "Before it becomes harder." I waited a moment longer, hoping she'd change her mind. She didn't. So I left. And as I reached my door, I realized the question echoing in the back of my mind wasn't hers or mine. Just something neither of us had dared to ask aloud. What happens if we don't stop? For a week, I didn't see her. No porch sweeping, no kettle hum through the wall. Her mailbox overflowed a little, flyers, bills, the usual junk. I told myself she'd gone to visit her son. Or maybe she just needed space. But the silence had weight to it. The kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat in the hall. I started leaving earlier for work, coming home later. I didn't want to seem like I was waiting for her. Though I was. On the 8th night, I saw her car in the driveway again, lights off, curtains drawn. Something about that felt worse than her absence. The next morning, I caught her outside, taking the trash out. She looked thinner, like she'd been carrying something invisible but heavy. "Morning," I said. She nodded. Her tone was polite, neutral, like we'd never shared a candle or sat too close on a warm step. "You were gone." "Just visiting family," she said. "My son." I waited for her to say more, but she didn't. Just tied the trash bag tighter than necessary and turned back toward the door. That should have been the end of it. But a few days later, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. No name, just my apartment number written in her handwriting. That neat, deliberate script that always looked like it had been practiced. Inside was a folded note. "You're kind. But kindness becomes a debt when people start needing it. I can't owe you that. I stared at it for a long time, tracing the indent of her pen. It didn't feel like rejection. It felt like retreat, like she was trying to protect something, maybe both of us. Still, the words cut in a quiet way. That evening, I walked past her door twice. Once deliberately, once pretending to forget something. Her lights were on both times. I stopped outside the second time, hand halfway raised to knock. I could hear faint music inside, something slow, old, maybe jazz. I thought about what I'd say if she opened it. How I'd tell her I didn't want anything from her. Not answers, not promises. Just the space between conversations, the quiet comfort of being seen. But I didn't knock. The music faded, replaced by the kettle clicking off. I stood there until the hall light flickered out, and only then did I realize how foolish I must have looked. Waiting for something that wasn't coming. Back in my room, I opened my phone. Typed out a message. Did I do something wrong? Deleted it. Typed again. I miss our talks. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote nothing at all. Just stared at the blinking cursor until the screen dimmed. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It rained again, the kind of steady rain that makes the city sound softer than it really is. I was coming back from the corner store when I saw her standing by the mailboxes, holding a small umbrella that didn't quite cover her shoulders. She didn't see me at first. She was reading a letter. Her son's handwriting, I guessed, and there was a small smile on her face. Not joy exactly, but something gentler. Something like relief. When she finally noticed me, she folded the paper and said, "You've been busy." Trying to be. The words sat awkwardly between us, like we were both pretending they meant something more than they did. She gestured toward the hall. "Come in for tea. Just for a minute." I followed her, heart too loud for such a quiet invitation. The kitchen looked the same. The thermos was back on the counter. Same chipped mug, same soft hum of the kettle. She moved carefully, like each motion was an apology. "I shouldn't have left that note," she said finally. "It sounded colder than I meant." I shrugged. "It sounded like goodbye." She looked at me then, really looked. Maybe it was. Or maybe I was just scared. Off what? Her hands rested on the table. Off wanting something that would make me feel young again. And realizing it wouldn't last. The words weren't dramatic. Just true. I sat across from her, steam rising between us. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "I wasn't waiting for you to." "Yes, you were," she said softly. "And I let you." We fell quiet again. The clock ticked once, twice, I don't know who moved first, maybe both of us at once. Our hands met halfway across the table. Not clasped, not held, just resting, side by side. I kept thinking, she whispered, that if I ignored it long enough, it would fade. Did it? Her thumb brushed the edge of the table. No. The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved to pour the tea. "I don't know what this is," I said finally. "I don't even know if it's supposed to be anything." "It doesn't have to be," she said. "Maybe it's just two people meeting in the middle of their loneliness." There was no sadness in her voice this time, just understanding. We sat there, still not touching, but somehow closer than we'd ever been. Her eyes softened. "You should live your life," she said. "Draw things that aren't me." "I can try." "That's enough." The silence that followed didn't ache the way it used to. It felt clean, almost peaceful. When I stood to leave, she smiled, small, tired, real. "Okay," she said. I nodded, and that was it. No confessions, no kiss. Just two people who almost crossed a line and finally learned to stand beside it. Summer passed before I noticed. The jasmine by the fence had overgrown, spilling onto the steps where we once sat. The air smelled the same, though, rain and earth and faint detergent. I still lived in the same apartment. She still lived downstairs, but something between us had shifted. Not broken, not repaired, just settled. She started leaving door open again when she watered the plants. Sometimes I'd wave. Sometimes she'd offer tea. Neither of us pretended it meant more than it did, but it always felt like a quiet agreement we're okay now. One morning, I left early for a job interview. It was raining, the same kind of soft drizzle that blurred everything a little. She was on the porch, filling a small thermos. "Coffee?" she asked. "Tea," I corrected, smiling. She laughed. "So you learned." I took the thermos from her hand. The metal was warm. "Guess some things stick, some do," she said. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than usual. Not the way they used to, full of hesitation, but with something lighter. When I stepped off the porch, she said, "Yard 47, I frowned. "What?" "That's when the bus comes. You'll miss it if you keep staring at me." It was a small thing, a quiet tease, but it lingered. The kind of warmth that carries you through the day without meaning to. Weeks later, after I got the job, I found her sitting on the same front step at dusk. 2 mugs this time. Tea for her, black coffee for me. We talked about nothing important: the neighbor's dog, the leak that finally got fixed, the way the evenings were getting shorter. At one point, she said, "You know, I kept the light she fixed. I thought about replacing it, but it still works." "Then don't replace it," I said. She smiled into her cup. "I won't." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. Just familiar, like background music we'd both grown used to. Later that night, as I closed my window, I saw her light still on. She was sitting by her kitchen table, the thermos between her hands, looking out toward the rain. And for a moment it didn't feel like longing anymore. Just quiet recognition that some doors, once opened, don't need to close all the way. I still draw sometimes, and sometimes, without meaning to, I draw her kitchen, the chip mug, the kettle, the faint curve of her hand resting beside mine. It's not love in the way people expect it, it's steadier than that, smaller, but real. The kind that stays. I think about what she said that first night. I shouldn't have opened the door. And how everything that followed began because she did.